Hey guys, it's Vicky here. Let's talk Fear the Walking Dead. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking all about the third episode of the 7th season of Fear the Walking Dead. This episode is titled Cindy Hawkins, and if you guys have not yet watched this episode, I highly suggest you do so before watching this video because I'm going to be deep diving into every single scene of this episode, so to avoid major spoilers, please go watch that first, and then come back and see if you agree or disagree with what I have to say about each scene of this episode. And so, the episode begins with June and John Sr. in Teddy's bunker. It shows the audience how the two have been spending their days in the bunker. After each day, June makes sure to mark down how many days they've been in the bunker, and how many days until they can go out to the surface again. Throughout each day, John continuously tries to reach out to other potential survivors with the radio in the bunker. The routine continues until one night, there is a rumbling within the bunker and a shelf collapses, revealing a room where Teddy used to commit his murders. So from the opening minutes, we can definitely tell that this episode is going to only focus on John and June. And when they find when the room that Teddy did his murders in is revealed, June wants to get the heck out of there and completely forget that it exists the moment she knows what it is. And honestly, I don't blame her. I would not want to be in there either just because it's a murder room. It's a literal murder room. I don't want to be in a murder room. So I am with June in this entire thing. But then you can definitely see that finding out the existence of this room or finding out where it is for John is very important. You can just see that knowing where it is and being in the room and looking around the room where Teddy did all of these horrific things, it triggers something in John, and I definitely, well, it's rather obvious that it has to do something about his past, since he's been wanting to find this room for the last 40 years of his life, since he's been trying to track down Teddy and throw him in jail. Well, he did throw him in jail, but then he did it by the wrong means. But I just think finding this room and knowing exactly where it is, seeing everything in the room, really triggered something in John, and that really kind of propels this entire episode. June finds John in the room and tries to convince him to close up the room and forget it exists. John argues that he needs to find the answers that have been plaguing him for close to 40 years. He tells June that they only found 22 bodies out of 23 victims, and John seems determined to find out where the last victim, Cindy Hawkins, was hidden. Now obviously, we now know why the title of this episode is called Cindy Hawkins, and basically the premise of this entire episode now is for John to be a detective again and try to find out exactly where Teddy hid her. And when he tells June about the promise that he made Cindy's mother, that he would find her body and put her to rest, I feel like that's not exactly what he wants to do. Of course he wants to fulfill that promise, but then I feel like that's also more of an excuse that he wants to find Cindy's body, or find out where it is anyway, and just like, it's for his own peace of mind rather than for Cindy's mother. John then asks June about the suits she's been putting together, and she tells him that she's been trying to make them as airtight as possible, but it's been difficult. The two of them discuss when it would be considered safe to go outside, and June tells John that from what she read, it would be best to wait it out until their day counter hits 0. Now, when I first saw like the day counter that June had written, and it was basically just counting down the days to when they can go up to the surface, I think it's like days till they open or something like that, I was rather confused because I didn't know where they got those numbers. And like, of course June is very smart, she does her research, but the thing is, up until this scene, I wasn't exactly sure how she would be able to come up with these numbers. The only person that I think out of the entire like character roster who would be able to come up with these like certain numbers would be Grace, but obviously she's not here. She's with Morgan, and baby Morgan, because I like baby Morgan. So I was rather confused of how they even knew when it would be safe to go up there, unless like they just completely guessed it. But then when June basically like tells John that she read that like when the counter basically hits 0, it's better to play it safe than sorry. I really like that minor detail just because I really hate it when shows or basically movies, anything, throws a stat out at you and it's like, how did that stat come to be? Like, where did you get this? And I'm glad that they somewhat kind of explained it. Like, they obviously didn't explain it in detail, but at least we know it came from somewhere. John begins to have hand tremors and eventually hallucinates as he continues to think about the room Teddy had committed the murders in, and he finds Cindy's necklace and Teddy's box of murder trophies. He first hears a female voice coming from outside the bunker and goes outside. Thinking that it's an actual person who needs his help, he approaches who he thought was a young woman, but in actuality, it was a walker. June saves him just before he gets bit by the walker, but before they go back inside the bunker, they spot 3 cloaked individuals watching them. Now, I can't confirm whether these 3 individuals are like stalkers that we saw in the previous episodes, but I'm pretty sure they are, but I'm just gonna call them the cloaked individuals for now, just because I can't confirm anything right now. So when John first comes out of the bunker, he approaches, or he finds 2 walkers on the ground, and he approaches one, and that one is very obviously Teddy, because it has his signature glasses on the body, so like that's definitely 100% Teddy. But then when John goes to the second body, he approaches it, and he's like, he looks sad, and it's because he believes that it is Dakota. Because in front of the walker, there's Dakota's knife, and that's what he uses to kill the walker, or kill Dakota's walker. I'm using quotes because Dakota does not have any body left, because from what I remember, her body was disintegrated, but then John doesn't exactly know that since he was in the bunker when the bomb went off, so he had no knowledge of her body being completely destroyed. But I'm just confused as if, are the writers actually trying to say that that's Dakota, or is it just John giving himself peace? Because the line that he says is another one I couldn't save, referring to Dakota, and so it might have just been like a character development thing and not the writers actually saying that this walker is Dakota. At least I really hope that's the case, otherwise their continuity is really, really bad for this one episode anyway. And I really like how they made it really, really, really obvious that John was hallucinating, especially because it gives a huge contrast to how they showed Daniel hallucinating in his episode in season 6. And I just really like that contrast, and for this episode in particular, I really like that it gives off a more spooky and horror movie vibe, and it's just, I like that type of vibe. I also liked the huge twist on Daniel's episode, but I digress. Once June confirms that John was not bit, she confronts him about why he was outside. John tells her that he heard Cindy calling out to him. June figures out that John is going through alcohol withdrawal, which is what was causing his hand tremors and hallucinations. Just as June is trying to figure out how to help John with his withdrawal, the cloaked people from outside begin to hit a hatch on the roof of the bunker. June attempts to secure the hatch as John's hallucinations get worse. Alright, so when the 3 cloaked people started hitting the hatch to get into the bunker, I don't understand why they did that. Of course they want to go into the bunker, but why would you hit a hatch that is all the way on another side when you clearly watched 2 people going into an actual entrance of this bunker that you want to get into? Like, there's no guarantee that the hatch might even open, and there's a much easier entranceway that these people saw June and John going into, so I don't understand why they didn't just go over to the entrance and bang on that until it opened, because clearly it opens. The hatch that they're trying to get open might not open, or it's, of course, a lot harder to get open because it's not been opened for a long time. So, like, I'm questioning the intelligence of these three people, to be completely honest, because it's not like they're trying to make a subtle entrance either. They're clearly banging on the hatch, and I just don't get it. I really don't get it. Like, that would not happen in a real-life apocalypse, because they clearly watched John and June coming out of the hatch and going into the bunker. I don't get it. John walks into Teddy's murder room and sees Cindy on the table, and she begs him to help her and to find her body. June interrupts his hallucination and tries to convince him to rest. She boards up the room and manages to get John into bed. Unfortunately, his hallucinations get the better of John, and he pries the boarded room open again. June forcefully injects him with a sedative to stop him from doing any more damage. The ceiling collapses and knocks both June and John out, and John is the first to wake up, and he sees Cindy yet again, and she manages to convince him to help her find where her body is. He thinks he's figured out the location and is about to leave the bunker when June also wakes up. She then reveals that she made up the numbers of how many days they needed to stay in the bunker because she didn't want to face the world without John Dory Jr. I know that with John being very irrational and rather stupid in this situation is going to upset a lot of people. I know a few people who are also very upset by just how stupid John is in this situation, but at the same time, I kinda get it. Like, I'm not gonna say that he is smart. No, he's not. He's being really stupid in this situation, but at the same time, I understand why, since this entire case to find Teddy, find Cindy Hawkins' body, and put her to rest, like, he was not able to gather the correct evidence to rightfully put him behind bars. Yes, he did, as I mentioned before, he did put him behind bars and was able to arrest him, but that was because he planted Cindy's purse in the evidence. But that obviously was not the right thing to do. Even though they knew he was guilty of it, that was still not the right thing to do. And this entire case has been haunting him for 40 years. It took him away from his family. So I understand that, as stupid as he is right now, I do understand that he wants to get to the bottom of it because he's given an opportunity. He is literally given the murder room that Teddy committed all these horrendous things in, and he just really wants to find that answer in order to get closure, and like, it's just to ease his mind a lot more. But then when he says that he's going to go outside to find her body, I really don't understand what the hell he's going to do when there's freaking radiation all over the place, and I really don't understand his logic, but then again, he's not really in his right mind, since, well, clearly he's hallucinating, and he's being really dumb, so he's definitely not thinking, especially since if the body, if it really was there, it should have been found 40 years ago, and if it for some reason was still out there, it's not anymore. If it was in the blast radius of this bomb, since we saw how all walkers kind of are disintegrated from the blast, so I'm not going to defend how stupid, well, I kind of already did, but then, like, yes, I'm defending how stupid John's actions are, and I understand it, but I'm not going to call them rational or smart in any way, because he's risking himself, he's risking June, and he's being dumb, but I understand why. That's all I'm trying to say. Alright, so when June reveals that she completely made the numbers up, that kind of debunks what I said about giving us the facts and where the stats came from. But I still like how they did it, and I felt like that was really needed here because it does show how smart June is. Knowing John, when he's not hallucinating or going through withdrawals, or basically any episode other than this, John is a smart guy. He's able to put two and two together, and he can detect things because he is a detective. And for June to be bold enough to lie to him about these numbers, she had to pretend to read them out of this book that she was reading, like the survival guide, I think it was called. And, like, I don't know, like, to me that just is, like, really, really smart. I already knew June was a really smart character, and this kind of brought it to light even more. And this scene is actually really sad because we haven't actually seen her really mourn for John other than the heartbreaking scene of her finding him as a walker. I still hate that scene. But other than that, like, her face in that scene was just of shock, and after that, we don't really see her cry, we don't see her mourn, is what I'm trying to get at, and, like, she just doesn't want to face the world without her husband, and, like, that's completely reasonable, especially because she doesn't, like she said, she doesn't know what to expect up in the outside world, and she's just scared. And even though lying to John was wrong of her, I get it. Like, she's hurting, and she's scared of facing reality without her husband, without the person that she's supposed to be with for the rest of her life. Not saying that her being with her father-in-law is not a good thing. Like, they're a great pair. Like, they're awesome together, but then that's not who she wants to really be with, as mean as that sounds. But it's reasonable, because one's her father-in-law, one's her husband. She's gonna pick her husband, because it's her husband. John goes outside to find Cindy's body, but sees the three cloaked men from before trying to break into their bunker. He has an inner conflict about what to do, then finally makes the decision to shoot the men. He manages to shoot 2 out of the 3 men before a herd of walkers emerge, as they are drawn to the scene from the gunfire. John overcomes his hallucination and kills the herd with Dakota's knife, and makes his way to save June just before the last cloaked man gets to her. As John lifts up the fallen wood to free June from the collapsed ceiling, June spots Cindy's body in the wall. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I really liked it when John was fighting with Cindy, like, having, like, an argument, because it really felt like he was having an argument with himself, because literally Cindy is an image of his conscious, if you will, and, like, it's a lot better to see that than just having him talking to himself, because that's literally what it really was. Because when he's talking to Cindy, or when he's arguing with her, she's telling him to do this, but then John's like, no, that's not what I'm supposed to do, I need to save her. And it really just felt like a devil on his shoulder type of scenario, and I found that really, really interesting to watch. And with finding Cindy's body in the bunker, I honestly kind of already predicted that was what was going to happen, but I didn't think that it was going to be in, like, the little tunnel portion of where the room was hidden. I thought it was going to be above John, like, because of the way the dirt was kind of, like, falling on him, and, like, the scene kept on focusing on the crack in the ceiling. And I thought that it was going to be like Cindy's body is now a walker and it's moving in the walls. That's why dirt's falling on him. But obviously I was wrong, and now that I think about it, that was 40 years ago, so that I was wrong and I admit to it. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. And with the body actually being in the bunker, some people might go as far to say that Cindy's hallucination wasn't an hallucination at all, and that it was a ghost, just because the body was in the vicinity of the place. But I'm going to debunk that, just because if it really was a ghost, it would not have waited all this time, since they have been there for, I think it was like 60 to 70 days already, and it would have made itself known, or her ghost would have made herself known from the very beginning, and she wouldn't have waited until the room where Teddy committed his murders to be revealed, to be like, hi, help me, find me, because that doesn't really make sense. Like, she would have been like, you are the detective. I'm pretty sure she would have known who John was from the get-go if this was a ghost. I'm saying hypothetical scenarios that I'm trying to debunk. But if it was a ghost, it would have made itself known from the very beginning when they got into the bunker, because ghosts don't really wait to make themselves known, I think. After John and June put Cindy's body to rest, they put on the suits to prepare to go outside, since the bunker no longer seems safe to stay in. Before they're able to leave the bunker, they get caved in. The two of them then wake up in Strand's tower and are greeted by the man as he welcomes them to his new community. Meanwhile, Morgan finds the bunker where John and June have been staying in. Morgan tries to radio to them, but gets Strand instead, and he tells Morgan that June and John are with him. Morgan declares war on Strand, that if he hurts them or anyone he cares about, he will kill him. And that was the final scene of this episode, and I honestly do really like that they ended it off like this, just because it really does propel the plot forward, and it's definitely going into a Strand versus Morgan civil war, and I love that they're doing that because I don't think that's ever been done in the Walking Dead universe, and it's just gonna be really interesting to see. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode also because I think that it was a very needed episode, especially for John's character development. Yes, he did some very infuriatingly stupid things in this episode, but like I said, I do get it because he was haunted by this case, by not being able to find Cindy for 40 years. So, like, for him to be so distraught over it, especially after finding a room where all these horrible things happen to these women, and he's been trying to find it for so long, and for him to finally find it, and then finding Cindy's body is just, like, I think it was really the closure he needed before moving on from everything. Like, he needed to have this kind of closure before moving on from the case and actually living in an apocalypse. And so I'm going to rate this episode an 8 out of 10. I know people might not agree with my rating, but I am a sucker for character development. I love character development, and I feel like this episode really did propel the plot forward, especially with the ending. And like I said, it was a very, very needed episode for John to, for lack of a better way to say it, get over his past and just move forward with June. Alright, so that was my review of episode 3 of season 7 of Fear the Walking Dead, Cindy Hawkins. If you guys enjoyed my video, please give me a thumbs up. If you guys agreed or disagreed with anything that I said, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel and you would like to see more content, please hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. I would really appreciate it if you guys did that. That's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!